No. Okay. Um, so we're on chapter 4 of Slaughterhouse, and we're gonna get started
Yeah,
reading.
page
I'm only gonna be
41. I
here for
think
like
we
an hour.
You have to go in an hour, is what you said?
I'm just gonna be here for an hour, I guess.
Okay. Well, you can listen along if you feel so inclined. Um, can you start us off again like you
Oh yeah,
usually
of
do?
course. There are telegrams. There are no telegrams on Tralfamador. We write each clump of symbols is a brief, urgent message describing a situation, a scene. We Tralfamadorians read them all at once, not one after another. There isn't any particular relationship between all the messages except that the author has chosen them carefully, so that when seen all at once, they produce an image of life that is beautiful and surprising and deep. There is no beginning, no middle, no end, no suspense, no moral, no causes, no effects. What we love in our books are the depths of many marvelous moments seen all at one time. Moments after that saucer entered a time warp and Billy was flung back into his childhood. He was 12 years old, quaking as he stood with his mother and father on Bright Angel Point at the rim of the Grand Canyon. The whole family was staring at the floor of the canyon, 1 mile straight down. Well, said Billy's father, manfully kicking a pebble into space. There it is. They had come to this famous place by automobile. They had had several blowouts on the way. It was worth the trip, said Billy's mother raptly. Oh God, was it ever worth it? Billy hated the canyon. He was sure he was going to fall in. His mother touched him and he wet his pants. There were other tourists looking down the canyon too, and the ranger was there too, answer questions. A Frenchman who had come all the way from France asked the ranger if broken English if many people committed suicide by jumping in. Yes, sir, the ranger said. About folks a year. So it goes. And Billy took a very short trip through time, made a pee-wee jump of only 10 days, so he was still 12, still touring the West with his family. Now they were down in Carlsbad Caverns, and Billy was praying to God to get him out of there before the ceiling fell in. A ranger was explaining the caverns had been discovered by a cowboy who saw a huge cloud of bats come out of a hole in the ground. They had said he was going to put out all the lights, and it would probably be the first time in the lives most of the people there had ever been complete darkness that was total. Out went the lights. Billy didn't even know whether it was alive or not, and then something ghostly floated in air to his left. It had numbers on it. His father had taken out his pocket watch. The watch had a radium dial. Billy went from total dark to total light, found himself back in the war, back in the dowsing station again. The shower was over. An unseen hand had turned the water off. When Billy got his clothes back, they weren't any cleaner, but all the little animals that had been living on them were now dead. So it goes.
So it goes.
And, and his new overcoat was thawed out and limp now. It was much too small for Billy. It had a fur collar and G of crimson silk that had apparently been made for him personally, about as big as an organ grinder's monkey, full of bullet holes. Billy dressed himself. He put on the little overcoat. Two. Split up the back, and at the shoulders the sleeves came entirely free, so the coat became a fur-collared vest. It was meant to flare at its owner's waist, but the flaring took place at Billy's armpits.
Uh, I suppose. The Germans
Yeah.
found him to be one of the most screamingly funny things they had seen in all of the Second World War. They laughed and laughed, and the Germans told everybody else to form in ranks of 5, with Billy as their pivot. Um, are you familiar with this kind of thing? The jam? I I I I guess that
Uh,
you are. This kind of pivot rank thing system.
I believe so.
So what's a pivot?
Uh, I don't know,
Is it like
like,
the guy on the front?
I think what it is when they're pivoting, it's like, like the guy furthest to the right is like moving.
Oh, the
Like,
person.
imagine like their line that they're making is an arm, and like at the elbow, you like move your arm, and that's kind of like what they're doing. Where like they're like the part of your arm that's close to your elbow doesn't really move a lot, but then the part of your arm that's like by the hand moves a ton.
Hmm. So would Billy be like exposed to fire or something like that?
I don't think that's quite it. I think they're just walking in orderly fashion. I think that's what they're implying.
Then out of doors went the parade, and through gate after gate again. There were more starving Russians with faces like radium dials. The Americans were livelier than before. The jazzing with hot water had cheered them up, and they came to a shed where a corporal with only one arm and one eye wrote the name and serial number of each prisoner in a big red ledger. Everybody was legally alive now. Before they got their names and numbers in that book, they were missing in action and probably dead. So it goes.
So it goes.
I I feel like I kind of I guess taking a tangent from the book. Um, this is something that I resonate with. Um, what they're saying in the paragraph. Yeah, that those who are not accounted for are basically they don't exist anymore. They're gone. They're dead. You can't
Yeah, yeah.
you can't get back the things
So,
that you don't take care of. If you don't,
well,
that
yeah. I mean, or well, I'll let you continue.
the things that you don't check up on, you know, the people who you don't have, the people who you don't have contact with anymore, they're gone. They're dead. Um,
Well, yeah, they might as well be if you don't talk to them for. Well, you could talk to someone and it's your last time talking to them, and if you find out that they're dead 12 years later, did they really die
then
at
or
that 12 years or when you last cross paths with them?
it's something that I mean, even without reading this book, this is something that this kind of thing would be on my mind as like a in middle school as a middle schooler. I I think I spent maybe too much time thinking about all the people that were probably dead to me, but not actually dead. But but yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it's one of those kind of troubling things about life that, well, I suppose I've kind of come to deal with it by thinking, many people in this world you only really get to see for a short amount of time.
I think there's a saying for it in Japanese, but I forgot. Oh no, wait. I think it's ichi e ichi go or something like that. Ichi ao. I'm gonna have to get this one straight, but let's get back to the book first, okay?
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea.
As the Americans were waiting to move on, an altercation broke out in their rearmost rank. An American had muttered something which a guard did not like. The guard knew English, and he hauled the American out of ranks, knocked him down. Huh. I okay. He hauled the American out of ranks, knocked him down. The American was astonished. He stood up shakingly, spitting blood. He had 2 teeth knocked out. He had meant no harm by what he said, evidently. Had no idea that the guard would hear and understand. Why me? He asked the guard. The guard shoved him back into ranks. Why you? Why anybody? He said. When Billy Pilgrim's name was inscribed in the ledger of the prison camp, he was given a number. He was given a number 2 and an iron dog tag in which that number was stamped. A slave labored from Poland. A slave laborer from Poland had done the stamping. He was dead now. So it goes.
So it goes.
Billy was told to hang the tag around his neck, along with his American dog tags, which he did. The tag was like a salt cracker, perforated down its middle so that a strong man could snap it in two with his bare hands. In case Billy had died, which he didn't, half the tag would mark his body and half the tag would mark his grave. After poor Edgar Derby, the high school teacher, was shot in Dresden later on, a doctor pronounced him dead and snapped his dog tag in two. So it
So
goes.
it goes.
Properly enrolled and tagged, the Americans were led through gate after gate again. In 2 days' time, now their families would learn from the International Red Cross that they were alive. Uh, and this is the remember
Oh
the
yeah, I remember that line.
yeah. So I think um I think after the episode where we did that, I kind of
Mhm.
rethought our question and what is something that we can ask the book. I feel like that's something that every reader wants to know, right? Like when they read a book,
Guy,
I
they
feel
want
like they
guys,
just wanna. I feel like they just wanna like what do you call it? Want them to feel like the theme and the story and the message they're trying to bring in this book.
yeah.
guys, I don't think I know that this is definitely not has doesn't have anything to do with anything,
Hmm.
but I found this image that is basically like a bunch a bunch of 80s game covers for modern day games.
Okay,
Alright.
let me take a look then.
Whoa, esports.
That's cool. I want to see the Animal Crossing game one.
On another note, here's the classic image of The Last of Us for PS1.
The Last of Us Part 2.
Demastered. I think you've seen this one before, right, the Jam?
Yeah, I have.
Horror fanatic. I believe you were in the middle of saying something that you wanted to say about the book. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying that I really like how the author in Slaughterhouse is trying to like convey the theme and message into our own emotions, basically.
Yeah, I feel like he does that in a in a pretty good way. Um, like what you were talking about, right, the Jam? When you were talking about how he would juxtapose the very serious parts with, more lighthearted things.
Yeah,
So
like the whole he was like puking his guts out, and oh yeah, that's just like Newton's third law,
Yeah.
and how that's very similar to how people kind of dress up words like war by saying, like honorable war, when
Hmm.
honestly those words don't really belong in the same sentence.
Yeah. I would say to the Jam's point, horror fanatic, I think Kurt has a way of stringing the emotions with the words.
Yeah, I feel exactly what you say is correct.
Um, but
Well, I mean,
you
you don't have to say exactly what I say is correct, because the most valuable
Well,
thing you
well, you
own
can.
is your opinion, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I like the. I mean, I just agree to what you're saying,
Okay,
basically.
yeah. I guess I shouldn't become
It
offended
feels
that you agree with me.
it feels a lot of like a similar graphic novel I'm reading about called The Crow,
okay.
where a guy came back from the dead because, well, a gang killed him and his fiance, I think, or wife. I forgot what it was, but anyways, the tale of like how vengeance can overtake him and stuff, and how leaving at peace can ruin his afterlife, basically.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like that.
And what's the name of the book you said? The Krill?
The Crow, yeah,
Krill?
no, Crow, The Crow. I put in welcome and rules.
Okay. Um, but you know the question that we had for the book when we did the bibliomancy? Do you remember that?
I don't remember the
Could
exact
you tell me
question.
what the question was?
The question was, what should we ask the book? What's the question that we
Oh,
should ask the book?
we should ask the book. Is he trying to like? Hold on. I'm trying to
Just
word this
ask me
out
a
properly.
question and I'll do it.
Because you're gonna.
Here's one that I just found out. Modern TV shows, but on VHS. It's gonna load a little bit, but you get the picture.
Okay.
I'm gonna send it on Lewis server.
Are you still thinking about your question, horror fanatic?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to figure out the right question for the book.
Hmm. But speaking of asking the book questions, right? That's something that everybody wants to know, right? When they read a
Yeah.
book, what should they ask the book? So I feel like even though we didn't intend
Oh
for it at the time, we're asking a very
yeah.
basic question of the jam.
I'm wondering like what feelings, like what event in his past made him wants to make this book, basically. That's what I'm wondering about.
Well, he was in Dresden.
Yeah. He what
Mm.
was he um a veteran? Was he actually in a war?
Yeah, I do believe Kurt Vonnegut was a veteran. Oh, I'll actually double check to make sure. Yeah, he was in Dresden during the fire bombings.
Oh.
Because the first chapter is actually kind of a documentary.
Or like what do you call it? The autobiography of him, like reliving that memories or something.
Yeah, the first
Tunic.
chapter was.
It was him trying to figure out how he could write about the war.
Oh,
Yeah, I
now
guess
that
you could say
makes
the first
sense.
chapter was the chapter about how it felt to write the book.
Hmm. But I suppose if if you're still interested, we could do the bibliomancy thing again to kind of put this one to bed. Do you want to crack out the
Um,
book, the gem, to answer this
Yeah.
question?
Yep, it's right in front of me. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, go ahead and do your bibliomancy.
right.
People will be surprised if they knew how much in this world was due for prayers.
Hmm.
And what was your question that you were asking when I
What
cracked out the book?
what made him want to write the book? I think that's something to the effect of what Horror Fanatic was saying. I don't remember exactly what Horror Fanatic said. Horror Fanatic, can you tell me what you said before?
Yeah, sure.
What was the
Well,
question? The exact question.
yeah. My question was what certain events in his past made him want to like write this book, basically, and yeah.
I guess you could say that the phrase that I was able to pick out does fit it quite aptly.
I think that it relates to the video that remember the video that we watched before we got started reading the book? At the end, right? At
Yeah.
the end of the video, he asked everybody to share the name of a teacher that made them more happy or excited to be alive than they thought
Oh,
than they previously thought was possible. And then he connected it to the idea that if we can appreciate kind of the things that we have, and we can notice them and say that if this isn't good, then I don't know what is. I feel like that feeling is connected to the line in the book that you picked out, right?
Yeah.
Which was
man,
what?
that
I think it was well, I had the book closed, but he says I think the world is due for a little more prayer.
I feel like that kind of appreciating what you have in a way is a bit of a prayer, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't what you said, Owen. I feel like I haven't felt that in a while,
Hmm.
and yeah, just realized how much good stuff I still have right now these past few days. So yeah.
That's good. Um, how do you feel about that one, the jam? I guess our question has been answered.
I would agree.
Um, Here, I'll finish this page then. Next to Billy was Paul Lazario, who had promised to avenge Roland Weary. Lazario wasn't thinking about vengeance. He was thinking about his terrible bellyache. His stomach has shrunk to the size of a walnut. That dry, shriveled pouch was as sore as a boil. Next to Lazario was poor, doomed, old Edgar Derby, with his American and German dogs displayed like a necklace. On the outside of his clothes, he had expected to become a captain, a company commander, because of his wisdom and age. Now here he was, on the Czechoslovakian border at midnight. "Halt!" said a guard. The Americans halted. They stood there quietly in the cold. The sheds they were among were outwardly like thousands of other sheds they had passed. Okay? There was this difference, though. The sheds, the sheds had tin chimneys, and out of the chimneys whirled constellations of sparks.
The guard knocked on the door. The door was flung open from the inside. Light leaped out through the door, escaped from the prison at 186,000 miles per 186,000 miles per second. Out marched 50 middle-aged Englishmen. They're saying, "Hail, hail! The gang's all here!" From the pirates of Penzance. These lusty, ruddy vocalists were among the first English-speaking prisoners to be taken in the Second World War. Now they were singing to nearly the last. They had not seen a woman or a child in 4 years or more. They hadn't seen any birds either. Not even sparrows would come into the camp. The Englishmen were officers. Each of them had attempted to escape from another prison at least once. They were here, dead center in the sea of dying Russians. They could tunnel all they pleased. They would inevitably surface within a rectangle of barbed wire. Would find themselves greeted listlessly by dying Russians who spoke no English, who had no food or useful information or escape plans of their own. They would scheme all they pleased to hide aboard a vehicle or steal one, but no vehicle ever came into their compound. They could feign illness if they liked, but that wouldn't earn them a trip anywhere either. The only hospital in camp was a 6-bed affair in the British compound itself. The Englishmen were clean and enthusiastic and decent and strong. They sang boomingly well, and they'd been singing together for nearly night every night for years. The Englishmen had also been lifting weights and chinning themselves for years. Their bellies were like washboards. The muscles of their calves and upper arms were like cannonballs. They were all masters of checkers and chess and bridge and cribbage and dominoes and anagrams and charades and ping pong and billiards. As well, they were among the wealthiest people in Europe in terms of food. Clerical error early in the war, when food was still getting through to prisoners, had caused the Red Cross to ship them 500 parcels every month instead of 50. The Englishmen had hoarded these so cunningly now as the war was ending. They had 3 tons of sugar, 1 ton of coffee, 1,100 pounds of chocolate, 700 pounds of tobacco, 700 pounds of tea, 2 tons of flour, 1 ton of canned beef, 1,200 pounds of canned butter, 1,600 pounds of canned cheese, 800 pounds of powdered milk, and 2 tons of orange marmalade. They kept it all in a room without windows. They had rat-proofed it by lining it with flattened tin cans. They were adored by the Germans, who were exactly what the Englishmen ought to be. They made the war look stylish and reasonable and fun, and so the Germans had 4 sheds, though one shed would have held them all. In exchange for coffee or chocolate or tobacco, the Germans gave them paint and lumber and nails and cloth for fixing things up. The Englishmen had known for 12 hours that American guests were on their way. They never had guests before, and they went to work like daring elves, sweeping,
Um,
mopping, cooking, baking, making mattresses of straw and burlap sacks, setting tables, putting party flavors at each place.
um,
Yeah. What were you saying?
what's going on here? Um, so
Uh,
they're
well,
describing the Red Cross, and they are showing how they're profiting from the war. Is that what's going on?
what's going on is these Englishmen have been prisoners for so long that, well, they kind of got the long end of the stick in the term, like the as far as prisoners go.
Oh, so they started collecting food and whatnot, and they're trading it with the German
Yeah,
prisoners?
they were mistakenly at the start of the war given far too much food than they could use, and they've been holding on to it, and they're honestly having a better life than if they weren't in captivity.
Hmm, okay. Now that they were singing their welcome, now that they were singing their welcome to their guest in the winter night, their clothes were aromatic with the feast they had been preparing. Basically, it smelled like the food, right?
Yep.
Aromatic.
Uh-huh.
They were dressed half for battle, half for tennis or croquet. They were so elated by their own hospitality, and by all the goodies waiting inside, they did not take a good look at their guests while they sang, and they imagined that they were singing to fellow officers fresh from the fray. They wrestled the Americans toward the shed of the door. No. They wrestled the Americans toward the shed door affectionately, filling the night with mainly blather and brotherly rhodomante. How do you? Let me try it one more
Let
time.
me, let me take a look.
Okay.
Rhodomontades.
Hmm.
Rhodomontades.
Is that a made up word? Is that a fake word?
Let me take a look. No. It's a word for boastful or inflated talk or behavior.
Hmm. So
And
basically, just
synonyms would be like nonsense, balderdash, blather, gibberish.
brotherly gibberish.
Yeah.
So like, what's up? What's happening, cuz? Um,
Just
what?
kind of like talking nonsense. Like, yeah, I guess, just kind of, yeah, like you were saying,
Hmm.
the type of dialect that you have when you're talking with friends.
Um, they called them Yank and told them good show. Oh yeah, and Yank is like a what?
Derogatory term for Americans.
Good show. Jolly good show.
They promised them that Jerry was on the run and so on. I don't know about Jerry. Why is he on the run, Jim?
It's actually explained later in this page because Billy Pilgrim himself wondered dimly who Jerry was.
Oh. Does that make me a pilgrim of sorts?
I suppose so. I dubbed the Pilgrim.
Thank you, my good sir.
Of course.
Now he was indoors, next to an iron cook stove that was glowing cheery red. Dozens of teapots were boiling there. Um, Dozens of teapots were boiling there. Some of them had whistles, and there was a witch's cauldron full of golden soup. The soup was thick. Primeval bubbles surfaced surfaced it with lethargical majesty as Billy Pilgrim stared. They were long tables set for a banquet. At each place was a bowl made from a can that had once contained powdered milk. A smaller can was a cup. A taller, more slender can was a tumbler. Each tumbler was filled with warm milk. At each place was a safety razor, a washcloth, a package of razor blades, a chocolate bar, 2 cigars, a bar of soap, 10 cigarettes, a book of matches, a pencil, and a candle. Um, so at each table there was those lists of things for everybody at
Yeah.
each seat.
It's kind of showing the amount of excess that they were living in and the amount of luxury that they're afforded despite being prisoners.
Yeah, I could see that. Only the candles and the soap were of German origin. They had a ghostly opalescent opalescent similarity. Uh, the British had no way of knowing it, but the candles and the soap were made from the fat of rendered Jews and gypsies, and fairies and communists, and other enemies of the state. So it goes.
So it goes.
The banquet was illuminated by candlelight. There were heaps of fresh baked white bread on the tables, gobs of butter, pots of marmalade. They were platters of sliced beef from cans, soup and scrambled eggs, and a hot marmalade pie were yet to come. Hmm. Oh, there was a sentence break. That wasn't a comment.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. What do you call it? Punctuation.
Hmm. They were platters of sliced beef from cans. Soup and scrambled eggs and hot marmalade pie were yet to come. Um, I suppose
Yeah, I don't think there's supposed to be a period there.
um, I suppose that the bit about the rendered Jews and gypsies are it's kind of what would you say about that bit, the jam? How did you feel about that one?
I think I've heard of that before, but oh, it's the type of thing that well just kind of shows you that, despite the amount of luxury these prisoners have been afforded, not all of them were afforded the same luxuries.
Hmm.
I guess you could just say, not everyone's lucky.
Not everyone is lucky enough to have a banquet with scrambled eggs and what else?
Marmalade pie.
Do you know, have you seen marmalade pie? I can't exactly picture that in my head.
Oh, marmalade's just simply orange jelly. And I suppose it makes sense considering that, while they might be in luxury, they don't exactly have a lot of fresh ingredients, just canned stuff.
Can't stop, never give up. Some, dun, da, da, da.
Alright, I might head out
Indeed.
for tonight, guys.
Okay.
Alright, have a good one.
Alright, see ya, Alan. See ya, guys.
See you,
See
Harper
you,
Night.
Night.
Have a good
man.
night. Have a good night.
How long do you have?
How long do I have before what?
Of the slaughterhouse 5 thing you
Th
have to do?
this is chapter 4, right?
Huh.
I believe so, and we're on page 44 out of 96.
Huh.
So we're making our way through it. Well, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah, I'll be on it.
Okay, sounds good.
At the far end of the shed, Billy saw pink arches with azure draperies hanging between them. And an enormous clock of 2 golden thrones, and a bucket and a mop. Let me reread that one. At the far end of the shed, Billy saw pink arches with azure draperies hanging between them, and an enormous clock, and 2 golden thrones, and a bucket mop. And a bucket and a mop. It was in this setting that the evening's entertainment would take place. A musical version of Cinderella, the most popular story ever told. And I suppose we understand Kurt Vonnegut's attachment to the Cinderella story, the Jam.
Yes, we do. I remember, well, what he said about it in that video that we watched.
Hmm? It's like it's a diverging, it's kind of like a unique variant of the up and down, what do you call it? I don't know how I would describe
Uh,
it. The up and down of stories?
you know,
The rise
yeah,
and fall of tension? How would you say it?
just the way that storytelling progression goes, and well, yes, the term that he has used in this book many times is up and down, up and down, up and down.
Hmm. So it
So I
is,
feel like that would be an apt thing to say.
yeah, it's not unrelated, for sure.
Yeah.
Billy Pilgrim was on fire. Having stood too close to the glowing stove, the hem of his little coat was burning. It was a quiet, patient sort of fire, like the burning of punk. The burning of punk. Billy wondered if there was a telephone somewhere. He wanted to call his mother to tell her he was alive and well. There was a silence now, as the Englishman looked in astonishment at the frowsy creatures that had so lustily waltzed inside. That's quite the phrase, isn't it, the Jam?
Concur with you there.
One of the Englishmen saw that Billy was on fire. "You're on fire, lad," he said, and he got Billy away from the stove and beat out the sparks with his hand. When Billy made no comment on this, the Englishman asked him, "Can you talk? Can you hear?"
Billy nodded. The Englishman touched him exploratorily here and there, filled with pity. My God, what have they done to you, lad? This isn't a man, it's a broken kite. Are you really an American? Said the Englishman. Yes, said Billy. And what's your rank? Private. What became of your boots, lad? I don't remember. Is that coat a joke? Sure. Where do you get such a thing? Billy had to think hard about it. They gave it to me, he said at last. Sherry, who gave it to you? Who? The Germans gave it to you? Yes. Billy didn't like the questions. They were fatiguing. Ah, yank, 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 said the Englishman. That coat was an insult, sir. It was a deliberate attempt to humiliate you. You mustn't let Jerry do things like that to you. Billy Pilgrim swooned. Billy came on a chair facing the stage. I had somehow eaten, and now he was watching Cinderella. Some part of him had evidently been enjoying the performance for quite a while. Billy was laughing hard. The women in the play were really men, of course. The clock had just struck midnight, and Cinderella was lamenting. Goodness me, the clock has struck. Accolade and fuck my luck. Billy found the couplet so comical that he had not only laughed, he had shrieked. He went on shrieking until he was carried out of the shed into another where the hospital was. It was a 6-bed hospital. There weren't any other patients in there. Billy was put on the bed and tied down and given a shot of morphine. Another American volunteered to watch over him. This volunteer was Edgar Derby, the high school teacher who would be shot to death in Dresden. So it goes.
So it goes.
Derby sat on a 3-legged stool. He was given a book to read. The book was The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. Derby had read it before. Now he read it again while Billy Pilgrim entered a morphine paradise. Under morphine, Billy had a dream of giraffes in a garden. The giraffes were following gravel paths, were pausing to munch sugar peas from the treetops. Billy was a giraffe too.
Um, yeah. I guess Billy is a
Yes.
giraffe. What would make him a giraffe, though?
Well, he was described as quite a tall man.
Hmm. He ate a pear. It was a hard one. It fought back against his grinding teeth. It snapped in juicy protest. The giraffes accepted Billy as one of their own, as a harmless creature, as pros- preposterously specialized as themselves. Yeah, two approached him from opposite sides, leaned against him. They had long, muscular upper lips, which they could shape like the bells of bulges. They kissed him with these. They were female giraffes, cream and lemon yellow. They had horns like doorknobs. The knobs were covered with velvet. Why? Kurt is asking us the question.
I suppose so.
Why were the knobs covered with velvet?
Uh, yeah. uh,
Have you ever pondered this one before, the jam, in your reading of the book?
I don't really remember everything about me reading it because it felt like such a long time ago.
Hmm.
But maybe it's him speaking out not against the giraffes, but just the dazed out morphine state that Billy Pilgrim was in.
Oh, why the hell is this guy thinking about himself being a giraffe? That kind of thing?
Yeah. Like, why is he in this place? What of his mind state has brought him here?
Is he a furry?
Possibly. Quite possibly.
You know how the furries feel about their personas?
I do not.
I believe we briefly discussed this when we were talking about the baked goods podcast.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
remember that, and I think you brought it up because I was saying that it seems like there are, well, in my opinion, deep pockets in the community.
yeah, I was talking about how I was probably referencing the fact that on the podcast, somebody was described themselves as a furry, and they were discussing how you would about how he slowly began to engage with the idea of being a furry because he saw he saw the animal version of the furry as the best version of himself, like a more idealized version of himself if he was the person that he wanted to be, basically. Or if he was as good as he wanted to be, that kind of thing. And not in any kind of depraved way, but as, I guess, as like some kind of eh, uh, a way of introspection, I guess. I don't know.
I suppose it's always good to kind of have an idealized version of yourself in your head that you want to strive towards,
Hmm.
because that's the type of thing that really helps keep you going.
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess getting back to what I said before, it would make sense why furries seem to have such deep pockets because they're investing in something that they believe in, I guess. And I guess Billy wants to be a giraffe because A giraffe is the perfect version of Billy. Would you say that?
And also many of them are millennials, like core millennials, like 90s kids, and they mostly cash in on 90s nostalgia, at least the ones in the in the cartoonier, more classic side. And there's also the ones that just draw shit tons of porn and sell it to people that would to other furries that would pay top, I shit you not, top dollar for fucking
Well,
uh
I think
furry
Project, you're
porn.
looking at it from from a more commercial perspective, and
Yeah.
I'm discussing it in a more psychological way.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. That's why. Yeah, that's yeah. If you believe in something that you love, that you fucking love, you're gonna just run with it.
Yeah.
It
Um.
it be it's probably better than that you just run with it, and that's why I on that's why so many people just feel like they have to tweak so many things to get that perfect ideal version of what they want to make.
hmm. Um. I feel like in a strange way this kind of relates to the quote that we picked out from the bibliomancy that we did. Don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
Though I'm
I
not.
was,
What were you gonna say?
I was going to say, uh, in relation to what Project said about how a lot of people are kind of chasing for straws sometimes, where they kind of get obsessed to the point of like self improvement that they don't really thing. I'd say that fuck.
Are you
I
You're
are you
cutting out.
losing your train of thought? Is that what's going on?
Yes, I did majorly. I knew exactly what I was going to say, and then oh.
I believe I have an idea of what you're going for, but I don't exactly want to finish your statement for you, because I don't want to put like ideas in your head or whatever about
Oh
what.
yeah, I remember what I was
No,
saying. It
or
was like the
no,
idea of,
the correct
as
no, Alan,
much as it's good to like
correct
improve
the correct
yourself.
thing to say is I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I guess that is the correct thing to say.
Right, yeah, I remember it. So even though like some people get caught up improving themselves, sometimes the best lesson you can learn is that being happy with what you have is honestly one of the best ways to happiness.
Hmm. And I think that um um trying to find trying to it it kind of it goes back and forth really, the jam.
Yeah,
Because
well,
at the
like
same time focusing on an idealized version of yourself is you are appreciating what you have, and what you have is the potential to focus on what you want. But then at the same
yeah.
time, like you said, you can't focus on the idea too much, because then you're losing sight of what matters.
Well, yeah, it's always good to have an idea of what you want to be, but you shouldn't get caught up on it. And while it's good to kind of be happy with what you have, you shouldn't trick yourself into being content with a shitty situation.
Um and hmm, the giraffes accepted Billy as one of their own, as a harmless creature preposterously specialized as themselves. Um, hmm. And I suppose Billy became an optometrist. I guess that's in a specialization, don't you think?
Oh yeah, yeah. Optometry.
Um, I don't exactly know how this idea of furries and focus and finding and that quote that we read and this part about Billy being a giraffe is related, but I feel like it is, um, in the way that we've tried to describe it ourselves.
Oh yeah, everything's within a few degrees of each other.
Hmm. The no, not the. As the book says, night came to the garden of the giraffes, and Billy Pilgrim slept without dreaming for a while. Then he traveled in time. He woke up with his head under a blanket in a ward for non-violent mental patients in a veterans hospital near Lake Placid, New York. It was springtime in 1948, 3 years after the end of the war. Billy uncovered his head. The windows of the ward were open. Birds were twittering outside. Pooty wheat. Pooty wheat? One asked him.
Pooty wheat.
Yeah, and that's the infamous line there, uh, Jam.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's infamous. I'd just say it's plain old famous.
Yeah, I guess I had my words mixed up. Uh,
Oh,
did
it's okay.
did you catch the bird drop in the other in a few pages before?
I yes, that does sound familiar.
Here, let me look for the case word of bird. Love birds. And I suppose every time the word bird is in the book, it's referencing Pooty wheat. And it's in the book 9 times. It says here, the book says, these lusty, ruddy vocalists were among the first English-speaking prisoners to be taken in the Second World War. Now they were singing to nearly the last. They had not seen a woman or a child for 4 years or more. They hadn't seen any birds either. And I guess if there's no birds, then nothing is gonna say Pooty wheat then. And if and if nothing says Pooty wheat, then I guess there isn't a massacre, which is what it said.
Uh, wait a second.
It said in the book that
Oh shit. You know, you just mentioned that. Wouldn't that be implying that where Billy just woke up, there was just a massacre in a possible spiritual sense of mind, like not a
um
physical one?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know, but that is certainly a possibility.
I I had not thought about like that.
I suppose you would know because you may be referencing something that's happening later on in the book.
Well, I'm just saying that like at the start of the book, he says that after a massacre, all that simply happens is the birds say "Pooty wheat,"
Hmm.
and well, since they've just said that, isn't that kind of him speaking directly to the reader and letting them know that this is in fact a massacre
Yeah, I feel that
of a
way.
sense?
I feel that way, but I I am not exactly sure if it could extend to the spiritual sense, and I'm kind of curious to see if that could be true as we read into the book.
Yeah.
Um, wait. Oh, it says one asked him. Oh, maybe there wasn't one. Maybe simply there's a chance for one. I don't know. The sun
Yeah.
was high. There were 29 other patients assigned to the ward, but they all were outdoors now, enjoying the day. They were free to come and go as they pleased, to go home even, if they liked, and so was Billy Pilgrim. They had come here voluntarily, alarmed by the outside world. Billy had committed himself in the middle of his final year at the Ilium School of Optometry. Nobody else suspected that he was going crazy. Everybody else thought he looked fine and was acting fine. Now he was in the hospital. The doctors agreed. He was going crazy. They didn't think it had anything to do with the war. They were sure Billy was going to pieces because his father had thrown him into the deep end of the YMCA swimming pool when he was a little boy, and he had taken them to the rim of the Grand Canyon. Both things that were described in the book earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
The man assigned to the bed next to Billy's wait. The man assigned to the bed next to Billy's was a former infantry captain named Elliot Rosewater. Rosewater was sick and tired of being drunk all the time. It was Rosewater who introduced Billy to science fiction, and in particular to the writings of Kilgore Trout. Is that a real life author? Kilgore Trout? Can you look that up?
I am not sure, but I do know that it's yeah, it's not a real author.
Oh, okay.
It's a fictional character.
Oh. Rosewater had a tremendous collection of science fiction paperbacks under his bed. He had brought them to the hospital in a steamer trunk. Those beloved, frumpish books gave off a smell that permeated the ward, like flannel pajamas that hadn't been changed for a month, or like Irish stew. Kilgore Trout became Billy's favorite living author, and science fiction became the only sort of tales he could read. Rosewater was twice as smart as Billy, but he and Billy were dealing with similar crises. But he and Billy were dealing with similar crises in similar ways. They had both found life meaningless, partly because of what they had seen in war. Rosewater, for instance, had shot a 14-year-old fireman, mistaking him for a German soldier. So it goes.
So it goes.
And Billy had seen the greatest massacre in European history, which was the firebombing of Dresden. So it goes.
So it goes.
So they were trying to reinvent themselves and their universe. Science fiction was a big help. Hmm. I suppose we aren't strangers to the idea of how um, the kind of help that science fiction would be giving Billy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of people after the war use science fiction as kind of an escape from the reality that they found very harsh.
Mm. Um, and I feel like I do that sometimes, and I feel like most of us here are used to the idea of using stories as an escape or as a way to recontextualize our experiences. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
so this is definitely a line that I understand.
Yeah.
Rosewater said an interesting thing to Billy one time about a book that wasn't science fiction. He said that everything there was to know about life, was to know about life, was in the brothers' para. Oh wait, let me read that again. He said that there was. He said that everything there was to know about life was in the brothers' Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. But that But that isn't enough anymore, said Rosewater. Hmm.
Another time, Billy heard Rosewater say to his psychiatrist, I think you're going to have to come up with a lot of wonderful lies, or people just aren't going to want to go on living. There was still life on Billy's bedside table, 2 pills, an ashtray with 3 lipstick-stained cigarettes on it, 1 cigarette still burning, and a glass of water. The water was dead, so it goes.
So it goes.
Air was trying to get out of that dead water. Bubbles were clinging to the walls of the glass, too weak to climb out. The cigarettes belonged to Billy's chain-smoking mother. It's thought the ladies' room, which was off to the word for wax and waves and spars and laughs, who had gone bananas. She'd be back any moment now. Billy covered his head with his blanket again. He always covered his head when his mother came to see him in the mental ward. Always got much sicker until she went away. It wasn't until that she was ugly or had bad breath or a bad personality. She was a perfectly nice, standard issue, brown haired white woman with a high school education. She upset Billy simply by being his mother. She made him feel embarrassed and ungrateful and weak because he'd gone through so much trouble to give him life and to keep that life going, and Billy didn't really like life at all. Billy had heard Elliot Rosewater come in and lie down. Rosewater's bed springs talked a lot about that. Rosewater was a big man, but not very powerful. He looked as though he might be made out of nose putty. And Billy's mother came back from the ladies' room, sat down in a chair between Billy and Rosewater's bed. Rosewater greeted her with melodious warmth, asked how she was today. She seemed elated to hear that she was fine. He was experimenting with being ardently sympathetic with everybody he met. He thought that he might make the world a slightly more pleasant place to live in. He called Billy's mother dear. He was experimenting with calling everybody dear. Someday he promised Rosewater, I'm going to come in here and Billy's going to uncover his head, and do you know what he's going to say? What is he going to say, dear? He's going to say, hello, Mom. He's going to smile. He's going to say, gee, it's good to see you, Mom. Mom, how have you been? Today could be the day. Every night I pray that a good thing to do. People would be surprised if they knew how much in this world was due to prayers.
And that was
He
the
never
line.
said it.
Who
Never
says
said
that
a truer
line?
word, dear.
Hold on.
His mother.
Oh, his mother said the line. Okay.
Yeah. Does
I
your
get.
mother come to see you often?
Um. um. I guess. Hmm. I guess it's not inconsequential that his mother said the line. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
it was I forget who, but it was his Kurt's friends, the friend of Kirk. It was his wife that made him realize that he shouldn't be using the book to promote war. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
So it's I guess it's a womanly touch, as um as one might have said in the old days. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um. Can you continue?
Oh, yes. Yes, I continue. My mother is dead, said Rosewater. So it goes.
So it goes.
I'm sorry. I wish she had a happy life as long as it lasted. The consolation, anyway. Yes. Billy's father is dead, said Billy's mother. So it goes.
So it goes. A boy needs a father. And on it went, that duet between the dumb, praying lady and the big, hollow man, so full of loving echoes. He was he was at the top of his class when this happened, said Billy's mother. Maybe he was working too hard, said Rosewater. He held a book and he held a book he wanted to read, but he was much too polite to read and talk too. Easy as it was to give Billy's mother satisfactory answers. The book was Maniacs in the Fourth Dimension by Kilgore Trout. It was about people whose mental diseases could be treated because the causes of the diseases were all in the fourth dimension, and three-dimensional earthling doctors couldn't see those causes at all, or even imagine them. One thing Trout said that Rosewater had liked very much was that they were really vampires and werewolves and goblins and angels and so on, but that they were in the fourth dimension. So was William Blake, Rosewater's favorite poet, according to Trout. So were heaven and hell. Um, I don't exactly know what to say about that last part, the jam.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I suppose the entire leading up to it is just. Hmm.
I feel like this is kind of, at the same time, I understand what it is, but I feel like it's kind of meta at the same time.
No, I feel like it's, well, like I said earlier, I think the Kilgore Trout character was also a veteran,
Hmm.
and it's about, like, science fiction is their kind of way of trying to cope with, well, the mental issues that they're dealing with, and they're so used to people telling them that, they don't know what's wrong with them, that they're convinced that the reason that no one knows what's wrong with them is because they simply aren't able to at all.
Because,
Hence the whole fourth dimension, heaven and hell stuff.
yeah, I feel like, in a way, the reason I feel like this is meta because, um, the reason I feel like this is meta is because at the same time, while we're trying to understand the book and the way it could be used to describe our own lives, we shouldn't get lost in the sauce, so to speak, the way Rosewater is being lost in the pages of his books, like he is in this
Yeah, yeah.
previous paragraph. Um, but that's why I am a bit confused about this last bit because I don't know if it's uh I don't know if it was written with that intention in mind.
Yeah. Well, sometimes author's intent is almost kind of secondary to personal acknowledgement.
Hmm, okay. He he engaged to a very rich girl, said Billy's mother. That's
The
good,
rich girl.
said Rosewater. Money can be a great comfort sometimes. It really can. Of course it can. It isn't much fun if you have to pinch every penny till it screams. It's nice to have a little breathing room. Her father owns the optometry school where Billy was going. He also owns around six offices around our part of the state. He flies his own plane and has a summer place up on Lake George. That's a beautiful lake. Um, And that's a beautiful lake. That Rosewater said that line, right?
I believe so.
Um, uh, my PC is dying again.
Oh no. Do you want me to keep track of what?
I think we can finish this chapter.
Yeah, I'd like to finish this chapter as well.
Billy fell asleep under his blanket. When he woke up again, he was tied to the bed. He was tied to the bed in the hospital back in prison. He opened one eye, saw poor old Edgar Derby reading the red badge of courage by candlelight. Billy closed that one eye. Wait. Billy closed that one eye, saw in his memory a future poor old Edgar Derby in front of a firing squad in the ruins of Dresden. There were only 4 men in that squad. Billy had heard that one man in each firing squad was customarily given a rifle loaded with blank cartridge. Billy didn't think there would be a blank cartridge issued in a squad that small, in a war that old. Now the head of Englishmen came into the hospital to check on Billy. He was an infantry colonel, captured at Dunkirk. It was he who had given Billy morphine. There wasn't a real doctor in the compound, so the doctoring was up to him. "How's the patient?" he asked. "Derby?" he asked Derby. "Dead to the world, but not actually dead. No." How nice to feel nothing, and still get full credit for being alive. Derby now came to Lu Lug Lugubrious Lug lugubrious attention. Yeah, I'll look that up, and then you go ahead and read that part.
All the men sick. I can think we can do without the usual paganry between officers and men. Derby remained standing. "You seem older than the rest," said the colonel. Derby told him he was 45, which was 2 years older than the colonel. The colonel said that the other Americans had all shaved now. That Billy and Derby were the only two who still had beards. He said, we've had to imagine the war here, and we had imagined that it was being fought by aging men like ourselves. We had forgotten wars were fought by babies. When I saw those freshly shaved faces, it was like a shock. My God, I said to myself, it's a children's crusade. Colonel asked old Derby how he had been captured, and Derby told the tale of being in a clump of trees with about hundreds of other frightened soldiers.
Fuck.
The
So
battle had
that's
been going on.
where the reference is from.
Well, that
Yeah,
and in chapter 1, they also reference the title Children's Crusade.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like this book is quite fond with recursion.
it is.
I don't think people who saw that Allen show, are gonna be able to see uh to read Slaughterhouse-Five the same way again.
Yeah, I guess not. um, where were we? The jam in the book.
Oh, yeah, let me get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. The colonel asked old Derby how he'd been captured, and Derby told the tale of being in a clump of trees with about 100 other frightened soldiers. The battle had been going on for 5 days. 100 had been driven into the trees by tanks. Derby described the incredible artificial weather the Earthlings sometimes create for other Earthlings when they don't want those Earthlings to inhabit Earth anymore. Shells were bursting in the treetops with terrific bangs, he said, showering down knives and needles and razor blades. Little lumps of lead and copper jackets were crisscrossing the woods under the shell bursts, zipping along much faster than sound. A lot of people are being wounded or killed, so it goes.
So it goes.
Then the shelling stopped. A hidden German with a loudspeaker told the Americans to put their weapons down and come out of the woods with their hands on the top of their heads, or the shelling would start again. It wouldn't stop until everybody in there was dead. So the Americans put their weapons down and they came out of the woods with their hands on top of their heads because they wanted to go on living if they possibly could. Billy traveled back in time to the Veterans Hospital again. Blanket was over his head. It was quiet outside the blanket. My mother gone, said Billy. Yes. Billy peeked out from under his blanket. His fiancée was there now, sitting on the visitor chair. Her name was Valencia Merble. Valencia was the daughter of the owner of the Ilium School of Optometry. She was rich. She was as big as a house because she couldn't stop eating. She was eating now. She was eating a Three Musketeers candy bar. Did
Oh,
you
three.
notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that. Is
Yeah.
that some vor action going on, or is that something else to jam?
I think it's talking about the Three Musketeers is in the Mars candy bar of what is it?
The brand.
Yeah, like the type of candy bar, but it's also quite apt with the name of Roland Weary's
Why?
trio.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she's eating the people?
No, she is not eating the people. She's just eating a Three Musketeers, but
Oh, she was as big as a house because she couldn't stop eating. So the three musketeers are living inside of her?
I wouldn't say it's quite like that. I'm just saying that like it's more about like, the the bringing back of specific phrases
Ah,
and how like they can apply to different eras.
mm, mm. So like the the depth of description, kind of similar to the Tralfamadorian books.
Yes, in a way.
Um, so you were on. So she was wearing.
Oh yeah, she was wearing trifocal lenses in harlequin frames, and the frames were trimmed with rhinestones. The glitter of the rhinestones was answered by glitter of diamond in her engagement ring. The diamond was for $1,800. Billy had found the diamond in Germany. It was booty of war. Billy didn't want to marry ugly Valencia. She was one of the symptoms of his disease. He didn't know he was going crazy when he heard himself proposing marriage to her, when he begged her to take the diamond ring and be his companion for life. Billy said hello to her. She asked him if he wanted some candy, and he said no thanks. She asked him how it was, and he said much better, thanks. She said that everybody at the optometry school was sorry he was sick and hoped he would be well soon. Billy said, well, I'll tell him I said hello. Promise she would. She asked him if there was anything she could bring from the outside world, and he said, no, I have just about everything I want. What about books? Said Valencia. I'm right next to one of the biggest private libraries in the world, said Billy, meaning Elliot Rosewater's collection of science fiction. Rosewater was on the next bed reading, and Billy drew him into the conversation and asked him what he was reading this time. The Rosewater told him it was the Gospel from Outer Space by Kilgore Trout. It was about a visitor from outer space, shaped very much like Tralfamadorian, by the way. The visitor from outer space made a serious study of Christianity to learn if he could see why Christians found it so easy to be cruel. Concluded that at least part of the trouble was Sisfod storytelling in the New Testament. He supposed that the intent of the Gospels was to teach people, among other things, to be merciful, even to the lowest of the low. But the Gospels actually taught this. Before you kill somebody, make absolutely sure he isn't well connected. So it goes.
So it goes.
The flaw in the Christ story said the visitor from outer space was that Christ, who didn't look like much. He was actually the son of the most powerful being in the universe. Readers understood that, so when it came to crucifixion, they naturally thought, Rosewater read out loud again, oh boy, sure picked the wrong guy to lynch that time. and that thought had a brother. They're right people, Lynch. Who? Well, people not well connected. So it goes.
So it goes.
The visitor from outer space made a gift to Earth of a new gospel. In it, Jesus was really a nobody, and the pain in the neck to a lot of people with better connections than he had. He still had a lot to say, all the lovely and puzzling things he said in the other gospels. So the people amused them one day by nailing him to a cross and planting the cross on the ground. There couldn't possibly be any repercussions, these lynchers thought. The rear would think that too, since the new gospel hammered home again what a nobody Jesus was. And then just before the nobody died, the heavens opened up and there was thunder and lightning, and the voice of God came crashing down. He told the people that he was adopting the bum of his son, giving him full powers and privileges of the son of the creator of the universe throughout all eternity. God said from this moment on, he will punish horribly anyone who torments a bum with no connections. Billy's
The
father,
the hobo. The
yeah.
hobo? The bum with no connections? The rock? The rock that couldn't move? That guy?
Oh yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the dude from the train car.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that that is connected. Which is ironic considering you're saying it's a bum that has no connections.
Yeah. I don't know why
Well,
it's an exclamation point. Are you supposed to shout that one? He will punish
uh,
horribly anybody who torments a bum who has no connections.
uh,
Um,
well, Billy's fiance had finished her Three Musketeers candy bar. Now she was eating a Milky Way. Now, I should actually note this is one of the connections I noticed.
mm,
Wow, where if you take into the symbolism of the two names of these bars,
mhm,
Three Musketeers candy bar could represent Billy Pilgrim's time in the military, while the Milky Way is his time where he kind of escaped into science fiction as a way to cope with what had happened to him.
mm. Okay.
But enough about that. I'll keep going. Forget books, said Rosewater, throwing that particular book under his bed. Hell with them. Sound like an interesting one, said Valencia. Jesus, if Kilgore Trout if Kilgore Trout could only write, Rosewater exclaimed. He had a point. Kilgore Trout's unpopularity was deserved. His prose was frightful. Only his ideas were good.
The jam. Are you aware that you read 2 pages back to back?
I did.
Yeah.
Wait, I did?
Yeah. Um,
I did.
my computer is at 8%. I know you didn't want to stop here, but I think that we have to.
Okay.
I
I'll
I d-
pin 51.
okay.
At least we got through 10 pages. That's good.
Yeah, double digits.
Yeah.
Um,
And away we go. Is there anything else you'd like to say, I suppose?
um,
I don't know.
I'd like to say something. I'm pretty sure at this point there's no way we're gonna be able to continue with Game Day Tycoon tonight.
yeah.
So it's better to do it tomorrow.
Mhm. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm getting quite tired myself, and I should probably
Hit the
be
hay.
going to bed since well, let me take a look at my schedule, but I think I have work uh today, which will give me about 8 hours to sleep, which is good since I wake up around 9, which gives me 3 hours to
Considering
get ready.
considering if you lay down in bed and immediately go to sleep, you'll get 8 hours.
Yeah, true, but I mean, in a way, I kind of count laying down as starting to sleep because sleep has many parts up
Stages.
to it,
Yeah.
including REM and I don't know, low power sleep.
Um. Yeah. Uh. Thanks for coming back, the Jam.
Yeah,
Well,
it's always a pleasure.
yeah. We're definitely gonna finish this book.
Yeah, we will if it kills me.
um. Good night, Project and the GM and
Yeah.
hashtag bring back Frid. Here.
Good night, you all.
Good night. That was my good night kiss, Project. I'm waiting.
Night.